Hello again, and welcome back to Year 4 of the Religious Education Initiative. This is week 31 and day 1. So we're continuing our way through the story of David. We actually finished 1st Kingdoms, or 1st Samuel, last time. We're continuing now with the beginning of 2nd Samuel, or 2nd Kingdoms. So last time, we saw justice finally arrive for Saul as he faced the Philistines in battle, cut off from the grace of God by his own faithlessness and stubbornness, and without the support and defense of David, the anointed of the Lord, because of his own jealousy. We saw his sons killed in the rout as Israel fled from the Philistines, and we saw Saul fall on his own sword rather than be captured alive by the Philistines. We also saw David go and rescue his family and the families of all his men from the raiding Amalekites, and then return to his place. We will pick up the story there, and we'll read selections of the next few chapters as David comes into his kingship. So this is chapter 1 of 2nd Kingdoms. After the death of Saul, when David had returned from defeating the Amalekites, David remained 2 days in Ziklag. On the 3rd day, a man came from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dirt on his head. When he came to David, he fell to the ground and did obeisance. David said to him, "Where have you come from?" He said to him, "I have escaped from the camp of Israel." David said to him, "How did things go? Tell me." He answered, "The army fled from the battle, but also many of the army fell and died, and Saul and his son Jonathan also died." Then David asked the young man who was reporting to him, "How do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan died?" The young man reporting to him said, "I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear while the chariots and the horsemen drew close to him. When he looked behind him, he saw me and called to me. I answered, 'Here, sir.' And he said to me, 'Who are you?' I answered him, 'I am an Amalekite.' He said to me, 'Come, stand over me and kill me. For convulsions have seized me, and yet my life still lingers.' So I stood over him and killed him, for I knew that he could not live after he had fallen. I took the crown that was on his head and the armlet that was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my lord." Then David took hold of his clothes and tore them, and all the men who were with him did the same. They mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and for his son Jonathan, and for the army of the Lord and for the house of Israel, because they had fallen by the sword. David said to the young man who had reported to him, "Where do you come from?" He answered, "I am the son of a resident alien, an Amalekite." David said to him, "Were you not afraid to lift your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" Then David called one of the young men and said, "Come here and strike him down." So he struck him down, and he died. David said to him, "Your blood be on your head, for your own mouth has testified against you, saying, 'I have killed the Lord's anointed.'" David intoned this lamentation over Saul and his son Jonathan. He ordered that this song of the bow be taught to the people of Israel, to the people of Judah, rather. It is written in the book of Jashar. He said, "Your glory, O Israel, lies slain upon your high places. How the mighty have fallen! Tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ashkelon, or the daughters of the Philistines will rejoice, the daughters of the uncircumcised will exult. You mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew or rain upon you, nor bounteous fields, for there the shield of the mighty was defiled, the shield of Saul anointed with oil no more. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back, nor the sword of Saul return empty. Saul and Jonathan, beloved and lovely, in life and in death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. O daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you with crimson in luxury, who put ornaments of gold on your apparel. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of the battle. Jonathan lies slain upon your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Greatly beloved were you to me. Your love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war have perished. After this David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go up into any of the cities of Judah?" The Lord said to him, "Go up." David said, "To which shall I go up?" He said, "To Hebron." So David went up there, along with his 2 wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David brought up the men who were with him, every one with his household, and they settled in the towns of Hebron. Then the people of Judah came, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. When they told David it was the people of Jabesh-Gilead who buried Saul, David sent messengers to the people of Jabesh-Gilead and said to them, May you be blessed by the Lord, because you showed this loyalty to Saul your lord, and buried him. Now may the Lord show steadfast love and faithfulness to you. And I too will reward you, because you have done this thing. Therefore let your hands be strong and be valiant, for Saul your lord is dead, and the house of Judah has anointed me king over them. But Abner, son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbaal, son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim. He made him king over Gilead, the Asherites, Jezreel, Ephraim, Benjamin, and over all Israel. Ishbaal, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he began to reign over Israel, and he reigned 2 years. But the house of Judah followed David. The time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. Now we're going to skip over, in summary, what follows in chapter 3 and the beginning of chapter 4. There is war between Judah and Israel, and in the course of this war, Abner kills Asahel, the brother of Joab. Joab and Asahel are both David's nephews, the daughters of his sister, and the commander, and Joab is the commander of David's army. The war continued, though, with David growing stronger and the house of Saul growing weaker, until dissension grew up between Abner, the general, and Ishbaal, Saul's son, the king of Israel. And Abner defected to David. Just as he defected, however, Joab met him pretending peace and murdered him treacherously and stabbed him with a hidden dagger. David grieved publicly for Abner, renouncing any connection or approval for the murder, but also not bringing any justice upon Joab, even though he curses him before God. After Abner's death, 2 men murder Ishbaal, the king of Israel, Saul's son, and they bring his head to David, hoping to gain his favor. We will pick up the story there. This is in chapter 4, verse 9. The men's names are Rechab and Baanah. So David answered Rechab and his brother Baanah, the sons of Rimmon the Beerothite, As the Lord lives, who has redeemed my life out of every adversity, when the one who told me, See, Saul is dead, thought he was bringing good news, I seized him and killed him at Ziklag. This was the reward I gave him for his news. How much more then, when wicked men have killed a righteous man on his bed in his own house? And now shall I not require his blood at your hand, and destroy you from the earth? So David commanded the young men, and they killed them. They cut off their hands and feet, and hung their bodies beside the pool at Hebron. But the head of Ishbaal they took and buried in the tomb of Abner at Hebron. Then all the tribes of Israel came to David at Hebron and said, Look, we are your bone and flesh. For some time while Saul was king over us, it was you who led out Israel and brought it in. The Lord said to you, It is you who shall be shepherd of my people Israel, you who shall be ruler over Israel. So all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord. And they anointed David king over Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 40 years. At Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and at Jerusalem he reigned over all Israel and Judah 33 years. The king and his men marched to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land, who said to David, You will not come in here. Even the blind and the lame will turn you back, thinking, David cannot come in here. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, which is now the city of David. David had said on that day, Whoever would strike down the Jebusites, let him get up the water shaft to attack the lame and the blind, those whom David hates. Therefore it is said, The blind and the lame shall not come into the house. David occupied the stronghold and named it the city of David. David built the city all around from the Millo inward, and David became greater and greater, for the Lord, the God of hosts, was with him. Now, as a note, unfortunately, there was one particular point, however, where David was going further and further astray. And we can see this in these two excerpts from chapter 3, verses 2 through 5, and then from chapter 5, verses 13 to 16. Sons were born to David at Hebron. His firstborn was Amnon of Ahinoam of Jezreel. His second, Chileab of Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. The third, Absalom, son of Maacah, daughter of King Talmai of Geshur. The fourth, Adonijah, son of Haggith. The fifth, Shephatiah, son of Abital. And the sixth, Ithream of David's wife, Eglah. These were born to David in Hebron. And then from chapter 5, in Jerusalem, after he came from Hebron, David took more concubines and wives, and more sons and daughters were born to David. These are the names of those who were born to him in Jerusalem: Shammua, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon, Ibhar, Elishua, Nepheg, Japhia, Elishama, Eliada, and Eliphelet. So, there's a number of things we need to point out here. First, David is trying to do justice, and generally he's succeeding. When the Amalekite comes and says, he's expecting to be rewarded. He's killed Saul on the battlefield. Now, he says Saul asked him to, but he's killed Saul, and he's taken his crown and the circlet on his arm, these signs of kingship, and he's brought them to David. So he's brought the kingdom to David. But David says, you've claimed that you raised your hand and killed the Lord's anointed. You have brought death upon your own head, and he has him executed. We should pause and notice that this is not the same story as we heard from the chronicler about how Saul actually died, that he fell on his own sword and he died. Now, I've seen some people that try to connect these two things together, to say that David fell on his sword, or rather Saul fell on his sword, but he kind of missed, so he was lying there, sort of bleeding, and then the Amalekite came and killed him. But I think that we're given the detail that Saul's armor bearer, Saul asks his armor bearer to kill him. The armor bearer refuses, so Saul kills himself, and then the armor bearer sees that Saul is dead and kills himself as well. So, who saw this, who bore witness, how do we know? But I think the idea we're intended to get is that this Amalekite didn't actually kill Saul. He was grave robbing. He was there on the battlefield stealing stuff, and he came upon Saul and he thought, I can claim to have killed him, and I can bring David his crown and the other signs of kingship and be richly rewarded. And David rewarded him with justice for what he had claimed to do. Right? Clearer cut is the murder of Saul's son Ishbaal. David gives no reward except justice to the ones who bring him the head of Saul's son, and he buries the head with honor in the tomb of Abner, who David also had buried with honor. So it is this justice, David is rewarded with ultimately the loyalty of the other tribes. Finally, when they see that he is treating Saul's memory and Saul's generals and Saul's sons with honor and respect. David is not the one who has brought them down, and David has dealt justice to those. Right. So David's kingdom is established. Right. And it says throughout that God is with him, which we know is true. David is God's anointed. He is his choice. Now, there is a strange thing going on here when he takes Jerusalem. And this is kind of the first time we see the city of Jerusalem mentioned by name with any particular detail. And it's this bit about the lame and the blind, with the Jebusites saying, even the blind and the lame will turn you back. This is an obscure thing. Even in the Hebrew, it's not clear. It's a point of argument. People aren't sure what it means. There's one suggestion that is interesting, that in this time, if a city was under siege, the soldiers defending the walls might be charged by the lame and the blind to fight bravely, with the implication of, if you don't fight bravely, may the curse of being blind and lame come upon you. And then David, basically says, you've turned the blind, the blind and the lame have commanded you against me, so we will come against all of you. But it's not really clear. The one thing that I think is worth noting, though, is David is seizing the city with violence, and many people are killed, probably many more become blind and lame in the course of this. When David's descendant, the true and perfect anointed of God, comes to Jerusalem, he heals the lame and he restores the sight to the blind. And by this we can see that he is truly the Lord's anointed, and in perfect faithfulness, because he is himself Almighty God, come to save us from our real enemies. So, and then, David has accumulated a great number of wives. He's at this point, in this particular and material way, he's not acting like a faithful king of Israel. He's not acting like a man after God's own heart. He's acting like the kings of all the other nations. He is taking women, whoever is appealing. He is taking concubines as well as wives. He's making alliances with kings all around, and he is having many, many sons. And it is unfortunate to note that of the ones who are first named, all of them, the first four, three of the first four come to a very sticky end. So that's a longer reading. We'll wrap up now. We will see that this kind of continues. David is now king of Israel, but he's lost that sense of innocence that we saw in him at first. So anyway, God bless you all. We'll see you all shortly for day 2.